Welcome back to Major Intonio's presentation of The Ifs of History by Joseph Edgar Chamberlin. Chapter 11, If the Boy George Washington Had Become a British Midshipman.
One summer day, in 1746, a British ship of war lay in the Potomac River below the place where the city of Washington now stands. The officers of the ship had been visiting at Mount Vernon, which was the residence of Major Lawrence Washington, Adjutant General of Virginia. No vessel of the Royal Navy entered the Potomac River without a visit on the part of its officers to Major Washington's house. He had been in the King's service at the siege of Cartagena and elsewhere. Admiral Vernon was his friend. Major Washington's estate on the Potomac had been named after the admiral. Lawrence Washington's acquaintance with the men of both Army and Navy was wide, and his popularity among them great. A visit to his hospitable residence, where he entertained them with true Virginian lavishness, was always a bright spot in any naval officer's life at that day. At Lawrence Washington's table for 2 or 3 years prior to 1746 had sat his younger brother, George by name. This lad, who was a gentleman and a soldier in miniature, had often listened to stories of the exploits of the Navy, of the capture of Portobello, of the bombardment of Cartagena, and of cruisings and battles along the Spanish Main. These stories and personal contact with their heroes had inspired him with an eager desire to enter the naval service. His father was dead, and his brother, who had virtually taken the father's place, favored the boy's design. His mother had opposed it, but at last she had been induced to give her consent. A midshipman's warrant was obtained for young George Washington, and on the summer day in 1746, of which we have spoken, his luggage had actually been sent on board the ship lying in the river. But at the last moment Mary Washington flatly rebelled. She could not bear the thought of her boys going to sea. She foresaw a time when she would need him at home. She withdrew her consent, and as her signature was necessary to his enlistment, it was impossible for him to join the ship, and his luggage was sent back to Mount Vernon. So thus it happened that George Washington did not, at the age of 14, enter the British Navy and embark upon a career which would probably have held him fast all the rest of his life. It was a real contingency, that of the possible commitment of George Washington to the royal cause. Every influence that bore upon him, up to the date of his brother Lawrence's death in 1752, was royalist. This brother was married to the daughter of George William Fairfax, cousin and manager of the great American estates of Lord Fairfax. Lord Fairfax himself, removing to Virginia, became the patron, friend, and mentor of young George Washington. The young man was in constant association with Englishmen, and always more or less under official influence. The Fairfaxes remained loyal to the British power when the War of Independence was declared. If Lawrence Washington had lived, it is quite conceivable, probable, that he would have gone with them. If George Washington had not been thrown much into contact after that with his Virginian neighbors, among whom the spirit of rebellion had been propagated from Massachusetts, if he had not himself become a colonial soldier and commander, there can be little question that he would have clung to the English side. In the meantime, undoubtedly, he would have been advanced to rather high rank in the naval service if he had joined it. The years between 1746, when the midshipman's warrant was obtained for Washington, and 1774, when the colonies began to flame up into revolt, had been of great activity at sea. The young officer might have participated in the destruction of the French fleet at Cape Finisterre, in the victory off Lagos, in the great decisive combat in Quiberon Bay, in the capture of Havana, and in many other sea fights. He would have fought by the side of Boscawen, Sir Edward Hawke, Lord Howe, Duff, and Rodney, and very likely have won laurels such as theirs. Nothing colonial could have separated him from the flag which he had thus served, any more than the influence of his native state could have separated Farragut from the Stars and Stripes in 1861. Is it too much to say that the American Republic would have been fatherless without Washington? Perhaps an arm might have been found, though that is doubtful, that could have wielded his sword. But where was the brain, the patience, the tact, the determination that would have composed the differences in the American councils, and have kept the discordant colonies and the jealous commanders together? That another man, that any combination of men, could have done what he did is inconceivable. In the grandeur of his character, and in the genius with which he accomplished a tremendous work, he is uncompanioned not only in America, but in the history of the world. Without his steadying hand in the war, the American army would have followed a devious course to death, and the young republic won to its destruction. As to the decisive part which he played in the formation of the Union of the States after the war, the word of his companions in the Federal Constituent Convention is conclusive. "Were it not for one great character in America," said Grayson of Virginia, referring to Washington, "so many men would not be for this government. We do not fear while he lives, but who besides him can concentrate the confidence and affection of all Americans? No one else ever could have concentrated them." Monroe reported to Jefferson, "Be assured Washington's influence carried this government." And Bancroft has put this judgment on record. The country was an instrument with 13 strings, and the only master who could bring out all their harmonious thought was Washington. Had the idea prevailed that he would not accept the presidency, it would have proved fatal. Washington was the pivot upon which all things turned. Lacking such a pivot, the machinery of the American Republic would have tumbled into ruin. Happy the choice of the Virginian mother who could not spare her boy on that summer day and sent aboard the man-of-war in Potomac Stream for his dunnage.
This concludes today's reading of the Ifs of History by Joseph Edgar Chamberlin. Join us also next Sunday for the subsequent part. Subscribe to Major Intonio's channel. Thank you for listening, and so long.